You have to make room for success. When I did my last startup, it was called Cuddler. We had 250,000 users. We were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. If you Google Cuddler, Cuddlr, or watch any of the videos on this channel, then you can see some of that history. It was a crazy history. And also I was a primary caretaker of my baby at the time. So it was an amazing, amazing ride. It really informed the Bites as Entrepreneur, which again, y'all helped to make a bestseller. We were on the cover of the Wall Street Journal in January of that year, 2015. By around Valentine's Day, about 6 weeks later, myself and my two co-founders, we all looked at each other, particularly me and one of the other co-founders looked at each other, and I didn't even say anything. I just looked and I was just like, this is it. It's time to go. Let's ride off into the sunset. And so we started entertaining offers for acquisition, and then we ended up getting acquired a few months later, shortly after my son's second birthday, as I talk about in the Bites as Entrepreneur. We knew when to quit. My main thing is culture, and I'm good with finding the waves. I've spent my life finding the waves. Journalism, which is my background, helps with that. You have to find out your own rhythm. I found that in journalism, and now I find that in coaching, in music, because I'm really into music. Seinfeld found that because he was a stand-up comedian for 15 years. So by the time NBC gave him a show, and it was #1 show in America, perhaps in the world for years, he knew when to quit. Just like I knew it was time to wrap up Cuddler. And come to find out, the culture that we had created was about to go away. So we left at the right time because we already made the impact that we were going to make. But it took a lot for us to say, we have 250,000 users, we're going to end right now because this is the perfect experience and we're going to end it. We already made our impact on the world. I can talk about that for ages. I've talked about that in keynotes. You can look it up again on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/BrownDamon, or grab any of my books and I talk about that experience. But you have to know when to stop. That's just as important as knowing when to start. And you're able to make room for success. If I didn't end Cuddler, then #1, we wouldn't have gotten acquired in that same way. #2, I wouldn't have started my Inc. column, which eventually led to the Bites as Entrepreneur and to my new one, Built From Now, and to you. So if I didn't know when to quit, I wouldn't be doing the great work that I'm doing now. Hopefully great. That's my intention, right? So you have to make room for success, but that often means ending something. On the Bring It Where show is how to reboot your career. This actually ties into, again, what I've spent several months writing about in the new book, Career Remix. And so many of us realize that the career, again, that we went into or we're currently in when we went shelter in place, when the pandemic was first known and we started taking action about it, that career, that job, not even career, that job, that's not it anymore. And it might have been a change at the job as far as the culture. It might have been you sheltering in place and realizing that you had different values. You might have started to like it. You might have realized that there are other things in your life that you want to prioritize. It might be a matter of you just growing as a person. There's other things you want to do. If you check out my LinkedIn profile, if you go to DamonBrown.net and check out my resume, proverbial resume, I've done so many pivots and so many reboots of my career. And it's not that the career was having issues. It was more like the careers or jobs, I should say, that I had didn't quite fit who I was becoming. And so I say reboot your career. I don't mean that it needs a resuscitation. I mean more that you need to go in a direction that you're not currently going in right now. And you want to go a little bit deeper. I think is really important. I've done some TED Talks about this. Again, you can check it out at youtube.com/BrownDamon and check out all my TED Talks where, again, particularly here in America, we tend to want people to keep going and say, quitters never win and winners never quit and all those things that we hear, especially as my little kids get into the sports because they're of that age. And it's like some of that verbiage doesn't quite fit. If, in my own instance, if I didn't quit being a full-time journalist, that I never would have become an author. If I didn't quit becoming a full-time author, that I never would have become an entrepreneur, et cetera, et cetera. So all these things that essentially it brought me to you, and it brought so much joy, at least personally to me, and hopefully some of that to you, and made influence on the world. Even becoming a coach and coaching hundreds of people at this point, those things wouldn't have happened if I didn't let go of the previous stuff that didn't work. Not saying that I completely let it go, which we'll get into it, but because obviously I'm still a journalist, I still do lots of writing, all those things.
but it's part of a bigger picture. And when you're thinking about leaving something, quitting something, which the discussion about the Great Resignation, and I talk about it in Career Remix, which is kind of the impetus for the book. Before they named it the Great Resignation, I obviously was already working on the book because books take a while. I've been working on the book for about a year. So before they named it the Great Resignation, but a discussion about like every month, again, here in America, I think in April, 5 million people quit their jobs. But then as I talked about that in our only me, the daily newsletter that I send out over at joindamon.me. It's free, feel free to check it out. It arrives every Wednesday morning. So this Wednesday morning, y'all would have gotten a letter about that where it's like, there's a difference between quitting and opting out. Quitting is saying, forget this, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. Versus opting out is saying, I'm opting out of this and I'm moving on to something better. I want to create something better. Even though you might not have a specific idea as far as what that better is, you at least have that feeling of it, which if you're familiar with my work, I talk about that a lot. It's not just, I want to have X amount of money. It's not just, I want to have this particular job. It's more like, I want to have this particular feeling when my day is done. I want to wake up in the morning and not hit the snooze alarm 50 times because I hate my job. Like little details like that make the difference. That's the feel that you want to have versus just going after the next job. That also applies, ironically enough, and that's why I mentioned in the subtitle, or I guess it's just the title, also applies to side hustles. Because sometimes we have these side hustles, which essentially is you have your day job, you have your side hustle. We have these side hustles sometimes where they're just on the side and we're just doing them and we hope to make it big money with them or make a bestseller out of them or get on Shark Tank or whatever with our side hustle. And sometimes they don't work. As I talked about in my TED Talk, the why you should strive for good enough. Again, it's on my YouTube channel. What I talk about in there is for every one thing that I've done that's, been consumed by the public or in the public eye, released, published, whatever term you want to use, there's like a dozen things that didn't make it. Now, there's different reasons why they didn't make it, but some of them was because it's just not going to work. So not only is it about your day job maybe not fitting what you're trying to do, but also about those side hustles and the things that you're trying, hence the word trying, hence the word experiment, hence the word side hustle, because you're doing it on the side until it either blooms into something better. Well, I guess 3 different ways. It blooms into something better, which is awesome. It stays steady and it's really good, or it doesn't fit you anymore. If the side hustle is not your main thing, you can let it go.